All right, I am calling the Village of Cross Plains Board of Trustees meeting of October 24th order. Roll call, please.
Trustee Hartman.
Present.
Trustee Bratton.
Here.
Trustee Brunner.
Here.
Trustee Brooklyn.
Here.
Trustee Polakowski.
Here.
Trustee Calvater. Here. President Langell.
Here. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Whereas public, this is an opportunity for anyone to address the village board on any issue. Please observe the time limit of 3 minutes while the village board includes input from residents and may not discuss or act on any issue that is not duly noted on the agenda. Do we have anybody for public comment?
Nobody online at the moment. I did receive a letter from the Village Sustainability Committee in support of the village's supplemental request for the grant writing. And Seth is raising his hand, so I'll go to him in a moment. I'm going to just put this up on the screen here for everybody to just take a quick read on instead of reading it back to you here. And if anybody has any questions, you can let me know.
Brian, can you also forward the email to the trustees?
Yeah, I will forward that to you afterwards. Sure.
And then just to clarify, it looks like those 3 paragraphs towards the bottom of the document are related to the sample grants that are going to be opening up soon for the platform. Is that my understanding?
The grants at the bottom of this the letter.
Land and Water Conservation Fund, Water Structured Finance Innovation Act, and the energy, including the rural and remote areas. Those are some examples that they're providing. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Why don't you leave that on and see what Seth has to say?
Okay.
I'll clear that out then. That's what his question is.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Seth.
All right, thank you. I'll keep this quick. There's an agenda item about the Park Street no parking zone and path, but the information in the packet is about military road parking. So I don't really know what the proposal is, but I just wanted to say that for the Park Street one, if you're considering changes, I for one think it's a good idea to look at that. I personally don't think it's really safe right now with that pedestrian path, especially when kids are walking to school because they have traffic behind them. I'd rather, kids be taught to face traffic when they're walking. So I'm just more curious to see what the proposal is, if this is actually supposed to be about Park Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yep. All right, we're closing public comment. Consent agenda upon request of any trustee, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration under general business. Do I have anything? Judy?
I just had one question. You noticed that the waterfront portion was highlighted and I didn't know if that was just like an error on the agenda or what.
Yeah, correct. Sorry, that was, I could not get that off there.
And I don't see it on here, but that's, I would like 7 removed so we could talk about it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve 1 through 6 of the consent agenda as presented. I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to accept 1 through 6 of the consented agenda discussion. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. So move. Report, village officers, I have nothing that's not on the agenda. Vice President,
And just as you can see, once these, set up at the Press Lane Library, I've gotten a lot of people already in town, once it's done it during the day. So thanks to the gentleman and his case for doing it, I can't remember their name. They did a great job.
other trustees, Doug,
I'd encourage everybody to take neighborhood sign with the friendly neighborhood reminders, lock car doors, lock front side, back doors are available here. They're also available down at Montague's. I've probably gotten about 50 out to friends and neighbors, and the conversations are very good as well, just around the meaning of it. You know, we see a lot of Facebook posts just around people complaining about the driver, the stopper, or whatever. It's an opportunity for everyone to take some ownership and some skin in the game into the public safety. Thank you.
anybody else? Andy,
October 1st was the first annual Evan Crowell Memorial Run at Glacier Creek Middle School, which was very successful. There was 192 registered runners. The winning time for the community run was quite impressive. And just recently, both boys and girls qualified for state. The boys for the 10th season in a row, the girls for the 4th season in a row. The boys by 2 points, 66 and 68, which was also impressive. But it was good to see the community come together to support families and leaders. So that was good.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, village administrator.
I just had one quick update. I recently had a conference call with Piper from the CARP C organization out of Madison. He just wanted to bring me up to speed and let me know that they are in the beginning stages discussing the next steps for a formal adoption of the Black Earth Creek Green Infrastructure Plan. This is going to be something that we'll share more information about as it comes forward. This is going to be primarily funded through grant funding being secured from the CARP-C organization, but it will require a formal adoption by the participating villages at the time that that is ready. So more to come on that.
All right, thank you. Any other reports? Mike?
Just wanted to take this time to give you a quick update on a few things that obviously happening around the village. First one is the small diamond update done by Shane Scarry and construction crew. Obviously, you may have seen some things around the diamond, but so far, so good. You've done a really good job kind of maintaining the area and making sure that everything's for the way it should as well. Right now, they have all of the concrete in for the dugouts, and they've started on the block wall behind the diamond itself. So we still have to finish, obviously, furnishings inside the dugouts, and obviously putting the fence back up and covering all of the dugouts. So, the other thing, the playground, it's going to be called Glacier Ridge Playground, which is many of you know, the Viridian neighborhood development, looking for a playground. That was ordered back in April. We are still waiting for them to install that. So should be any time now. They called me, it would have been a week and a half ago, and we had Digger's hotline come out and mark the spot, make sure there wasn't any electrical. They did that. The site's all prepared and ready to go. So now we're just waiting on the equipment to install it. And then lastly, we had our first meeting for the pool feasibility subgroup last Monday before the PRC meeting. We will be having that meeting. It will be running subgroup meeting before every PRC meeting. So if you or anyone else would like to attend, we will be starting the process to be bringing in the community with roundtables, discussions, different parts of what they'd like to see. Also, what's vulnerable for us to do. So we'll be trying to give the board updates as those things come to fruition.
Thank you very much. All right, well, oh, I'm sorry, Tony.
Well, I just wanted to update everybody on a couple of things. One, the police commission met October 19th, and we did prepare a process to start filling the position of our retired officer. Who will be retiring in January, so the process will take a few months to get going and get someone hired. So we we've begun the process. Secondly, I'm sure some of you have heard there, Minnesota and now Wisconsin has been receiving swatting calls, which are calls to the schools. They actually come in through the dispatch or through police departments, basically saying that there's an active threat at the school. We have developed a plan here with our local schools, but also just school district wide to try to alleviate those concerns that parents and staff and students may have, and how we're going to respond to these folks' calls. So it'll be a lot less active than a full out active threat response. But we will keep you in the loop as we learn more.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll go to general business. Number one, discussion and possible action regarding the contractor's application for payment number one for 2022 water system improvement. Thank you.
I always give you the long agenda, I'm sorry. Brian, I'm on page 76.
Okay.
So I wanted to take the opportunity to just give the village board an update on the water system project that was awarded back in February. And just kind of walk through the number of items that show up on a pay request and make sure that we're all comfortable with where we're headed. I would expect this would tend to start to become a monthly endeavor with payouts coming through as construction is continuing. I say that, but then of course winter will hit and things will slow down. So you might see us every month, you might not, but where we're at today is Portson has submitted their application for payments. This is the first payment since the award in February. So they have been working at both well 3 on Gill's Way and at well 2 at Bear Park. Both structures have the new additions, have new foundations poured. The underfloor or under slab plumbing is done. Underground utilities are all taken care of. So they've been working pretty extensively the last month or two. So what the pay request then reflects is just by the numbers, the first number on there is that original contract price. So that's that 3.2 million, which was the award for both well houses. And then the part that is their request is that line 4, which is $608,000. As a part of these contracts, we keep 5% back on work completed and stored materials, so that we don't release that until the end of the project once we know all the loose ends are tied up. So we keep that back as retainage. So if you take the 5% off of the work completed and the stored materials, you come up with a $577,952.85 pay application. We review these with the contractors, so they submit. We provide comments, tell them yes, no, can't do that, that's not done. So we've arrived at this point, and then each month we bring this to the village board for approval. I'm glossing over the next few pages, which have each of the line items for concrete, for plumbing, for earthwork, but that kind of gives you a breakdown of where the work has been. Given the quantity that's requested and given the total amounts, we're about at that 18% completion mark right now. Big picture, it's going to drag on as we expected for a while. There's still lead time issues with the electrical components. There's a generator that's going in at well 3 that's not slated for arrival until October of 23. All things that we expedite reviews and get in line with everybody else that's waiting for them. So the project, and to be expected, the way the contract was set up, this wouldn't actually close out until spring of 24. That is still well within reason. We just have to wait for some of the big ticket items to show up over time. So right now I'm expecting well 2 addition with the new restrooms and well 3 to be worked on this next coming month in terms of masonry and getting the walls up, getting the floor poured, hopes of getting trusses and roof on yet this year before snow flies. And then as the equipment shows up, as temporary heat is available, things will get installed over the winter. I expect it'll probably slow down some and then ramp up again in the spring, excuse me.
So yeah, I guess that's where we're at. So the pay application is the first few pages. What I also included on page 82 is a disbursement request. So that is a DNR document that allows the village to then get reimbursed by the state drinking water loan. So in that, you'll see that 577,000 from Portson, as well as I think 7 or 8 months of invoices from Town and Country included in there as well. So by the village board approving the pay application and then signing the disbursement request, funds can be dispersed back to the village, reimbursed back to the village for doing that. So that's in general the process flow of how this will go.
Should we put that well online before the generator? Because the generator is only there for emergency purposes. And we don't really, if that goes out, we still have well two. So I'd like to get that well going way before the fall, just to make sure everything's worked in.
Yep, so you're good. The caveat with that, we wanted them to get well reconstructed before we take 2 out of service. Because
Correct, yeah,
you have to, otherwise
Right.
you'll be down to just number 1. As soon as they work on 2, they're gonna pull the pump, it's gonna be out of commission.
right.
There is a way to install or to get 3 fired up without that generator. That is a possibility, so you could be shooting for spring or summer of 23 to fire up 3 without standby power.
Right.
We can fire it and then we'll have to sort through schedule with ports and.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we fire up 3, then take 2 off. I'm just saying, let's get 3 going to do all the testing and everything. And keep 2 on until we get the generator going. So we have that safety mechanism, but to me, I don't really want it sitting
Yeah. If
there
we're
for
sitting,
6 months. Let's get it used and do it. But you're right, I'm not confident that I would take 2 offline.
because then you have no standby.
Yeah, then we have no, that really defeats the purpose. So no, I'm not suggesting that.
So there is certainly the opportunity to fire up 3, bypassing the generator. And Peeper, the electrical contractor's already been figuring out how that can be made possible. So then, yeah, as soon as the electrical components, the motor control centers and the well pump itself are ready, the pipes are already in the ground and connected on Gill's Way, so you will see there's a asphalt patch there, underground's there and ready. There would be a little bit of testing before they can
Right.
pump it to system, but that's certainly an opportunity for next year.
Bobby?
Are there any issues with either the PSC or the DNR with, the project being delayed? I know we can't implement new rates for the water until like the project's done, so I didn't know if there was like a timing.
We will have to, they are aware that it's gonna take through 24. And that's the conversation of how much do we need to have versus how much do we overshoot until knowing when the project's done and what contingency we use up. So I guess stay tuned is my answer.
Well, and that's one of the reasons to fire up the well. To get it moving, so we're online with it, so I think to me, that's online, ready to go. The generator's only there for that emergency part of it, so I'm not sure.
It will not close out the contract,
No,
which
but,
is then what triggers some of the PSC and DNR steps. So it's,
but I thought the first one was tied to well 3, and the other raise was tied to well 2, no?
No, the first rate already went into effect. That was just, it adjusted the fire protection fees a little bit, that took place earlier this year. Or last year already.
so yeah, the second step is.
So yeah, then the second step is after the wells and the road are all done.
Oh, okay.
And then the painting of the water tower also.
I don't think that's. part of it.
That's not part of the safe drinking water now.
Okay, I just knew that was, okay.
All right. Michael?
So talking about this inside of here, we are with this payment, we are requesting from the safe water and drinking well thing, so we can do it in pieces. As we pay it, we can request it. It's not a.
Yeah, so DNR wants to see this disbursement request to show that what you guys are requesting from the loan is what you've actually paid, so that you're not overdrawing from the state funds to reimburse the village.
Right, and they're gonna send us this amount then?
Yep.
Since, okay,
That'll get wired right into the bill.
okay, correct.
All right, anything else? All right,
Oh, wait.
oh, go ahead.
So then since that gets wired in, we start paying interest on this right away, correct?
Yes.
Okay, even without the rate increase going in, we'll start paying off.
We've already done a draw. This would be the second draw.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets a little
Yeah.
confusing. You had to do a disbursement request and loan closing, which happened
June,
June.
July?
So there's already been one disbursement request, but it didn't have a pay application. Because Fortson hadn't submitted one yet, but you need one in order to close in one. The nuances of the.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yes, the village will be paying interest on those as they get drawn.
That makes
Yeah.
budgeting fun.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to number 2. Discussion and possible act.
We have
Oh.
to- we have to approve.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I guess you don't have to.
No, yeah, okay. Do I have a
Call
motion?
with the contract tomorrow.
Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve contract with application for payment number 1 for the 2022 water system improvement.
One second.
I'll second that.
All right, a motion in the second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. So move. All right, number 2, discussion and possible action, Park Street, no parking zone and pedestrian path. Just so you know, there was a little confusion. This made it on the agenda, but the paperwork didn't make it in the packet. The military road information made it into the packet, but it didn't make the agenda. So the military road one will be moved to the November meetings, so it's properly noticed. So we're talking about Park Street only right now, and I'll let Brian summarize that.
So, yeah, and I'm probably gonna rely on Tony for a little bit. So in the past, when the Main Street project was underway, I believe, they had set aside a section of park that is basically no parking. The parking area is fading. Jerry had asked whether or not the village had intended to continue to utilize that as a no parking zone. And so basically where we are at right now is just requesting to see whether the board is in support of making that a continued no parking zone. Tony, if there's anything else you'd like to add on that one, or clarify on that, please.
Yeah, you clarified it perfectly. The only caveat was I did reach out to the school, talk to the principal because of all the foot traffic. And he is definitely in favor of having it remain the same. So that way there still would be lines there where kids and families can walk away from the school.
All right, can I have a motion in the positive and then we'll go to discussion?
And we, wasn't on the agenda? It wasn't.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Oh, that was.
The military roads.
Oh,
now.
military, okay. Yeah. I'll make the motion.
Okay.
To,
To just repaint,
Yeah.
to keep Park Street in its current state of pedestrian.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. So we have a motion and a second discussion.
Didn't we discuss Park Street as possibly being torn up on big projects for next year?
No, the part of Park Street that's going to be torn up is the one block that's in front of Park School. Okay. That one is correct, but this is everything to the east of that. And just to remind some people, that went into effect when they did 14, we rerouted traffic on Bourbon, but we were concerned that people who live to the north would take Park Street. So we made safety, I think that plays into us trying to make our village and our streets a little bit more pedestrian friendly. I understand where Seth is coming from. You are walking against traffic, but it is a path, and I'd rather have them on a path without parked cars than going in and out of cars and drifting over. So I think it's not, again, the greatest thing, but I think a lot of the kids use it. So I would hate to try to change that right now. That's just my feeling on it.
clarification, Lisa, with regard to Park Street being torn up, is it the block in front of the school, or is it the block to the west of the school that's being torn up?
It's wherever from Market Street, one block towards, isn't that all one block or is there a road in between? It's Market Street to the east.
So
It's
Market
not the
Street to
block,
like,
it's not the
yeah,
block right in front of the school.
It's the
It
block
looks like
over,
one tip, yeah,
it's got the
correct.
PI to where the school is that's.
I thought Jerry was talking about going all the way to the Legion though. But
Well, at some point, but the reason we have, if you remember, the reason we have to fix that one block, that line has broke 6 times in the less than a year, and we've had to shut water, and so we feel that's an emergency state.
I just was making sure that I.
Yeah, and I'm,
Side, like it's not behind the bank, it's the block over. The further. west.
yeah, it's from Market Street to
From
the
Collins
east.
House and to the road.
Right, exactly.
All right, any other discussions or questions?
I mean, it's rare in a village recommendation to have this accomplished as soon as possible, so let's help them out. Good.
All right, so, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same, so moved. All right, number 3, discussion and possible action, village culvert, purchase, just remind everybody, between Quick Trip and the DNR, there's a real small slice of, land, with our stormwater culvert coming out that basically comes from the village. It was taken over by the county because of lack of pay, so it's up for auction right now. The minimum bid was, I think, $1,200. The attorney says we have all the paperwork that we need, that we can go in and clean that culvert and fix it at any time, so there's really no purpose in purchasing that, and why take it off the tax roll. That was my editorial, I'm sorry, but that's the issue. And yeah, you can see it right there.
So right now, Dane County owns it. I mean, it's back.
Well, the county took it over, yeah, from lack of paying taxes. So we don't really have to take any action unless someone feels that we should put a bid in.
I mean, like, the only thing that, this is right next to Quick Trip, yeah,
Correct.
is that it borders that new fishing spot, that I think Dane County also owns.
DNR, I think.
DNR does, yeah. So, you know, like, what's the worst that can happen if we just let this ride, I guess is the question.
It looks pretty small to do something, I don't know.
I don't think you can do anything.
And there's a culvert through the middle of it.
Who could buy it?
Yeah, at the time that we put this together, this agenda item, the unknown was whether or not the village had permanent easement access as part of what was written up for the property, and it was confirmed by both Paul and Brian Berquist that we do. The property itself is too small with any type of zoning that anyone could put any structure on it, and since we have access to it, our public works team at this time, it would just solely be to have it in village possession, but we basically have the same access rights at this time.
All right, I have Cameron and Michael, you want to say something?
I think that answered my question, because it says that Jerry thinks it would be a good investment. I was curious of what he thought we could do different, but what I'm understanding is since this was written, Jerry no longer feels that way because we can do whatever we need with it, with our easement access.
That was what came from our staff meeting discussion about that, but we did not know definitively at that time whether or not we had easement access to it, which we do now know and have confirmed we do. So it's not as pertinent an issue to purchase.
Okay. Well, Jerry's not here, but I just would be curious what he was thinking then.
Correct.
Michael?
With having permanent easement access, I mean, I guess my question is, what does that mean? Could we just go in and completely tear the ground up and do whatever we want to on it?
Well, I don't know what your term, do whatever we want. No, the bottom line is we can keep it functional and clean.
Well.
And I believe pipe replacement.
Yeah,
Of
yes,
what exists. Or-
Right.
Correct.
Well, I'm just concerned if we ever want to upgrade it, does that fall under the easement provision or not? That's where my concern is that if we have an option to buy it and when we own it and we want to do upgrades, significant changes, whatever, because that drains everything that comes through Bear Park, which comes from the Viridian neighborhood, and should that PI land ever become developed, a lot of that water is coming right down that easement. It all comes underneath brewery.
Oh, no. That's not by brewery. That's over, this water that comes out of there is coming from the mall. Glacier's Edge. The
Yeah,
other one is,
but that then runs under, that's why there's that big concrete block that runs right through Glacier's Edge that goes under Brewery Street, that between the clinic and the apartment building, there's a gully, and that goes all the way up and goes around Bear Park, around the Big Diamond, around the back of the Big Diamond, it goes all the way up into the Viridian.
well, I know it goes that way, but
I
I think there's another outlet and not that. I don't think all that water goes through the mall. It goes,
under the mall in a big concrete box that's right, a sidewalk that goes right through the middle of it. Which is why Jerry was saying on those implementation plans for Glacier's Edge, a lot of them we couldn't do because there's a big concrete block. That's the drainage thing that goes underneath Brewery Street and comes down that gully. I think a bunch of water comes down that way. Which is why if needing to upgrade that is ever a possibility, I want more than an easement. It was only $1,200.
it's not gonna be, you have to put a bid in.
Well, I understand. Well, how do we know how much to bid on it?
That's the,
Is anyone else gonna? You couldn't do anything with it, so if you put a $1,200 bid on it, you get
You're
it.
gonna get it.
And if you don't, you're not out anything, you still have your easement.
well, then I'll argue, don't put a bid in, and does the county wanna keep it, or we go to the county and say, we'll take it over from you for free, or $1. I mean, we could,
Can we
No.
watch the bidding? I mean, we can watch.
oh,
the
yeah,
bidding.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think at least if we watch it, we see if somebody does.
I'd be
I think it's
interested
a
to hear,
silent or sealed bid opening.
I'd be interested to hear Jerry's opinion. Based off of what Michael just said as well.
I'm just not convinced that, because I'm looking at, what you have at Walgreens, that there's a drain right there, and I just can't believe that runs all along 14. I gotta believe that drops right down into the pipe.
Oh, yeah, Little Creek comes out with Jacob
Yeah.
Apartments back there. This is its ultimate endpoint. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, if you walk that pipe, it's gonna come out, it's gonna drop you on far side of Brewery Street right there. Between those two things, that's where that box, that's the two ends of it. Because when you look, you go up and through Glacier Square, there's this thing, looks like a sidewalk that goes right through, and I think it's that concrete block.
No, you're absolutely right. The sidewalk through our park has a concrete there.
That's that drainage thing.
Well, my understanding, that is from the
That-
parking lot, for the parking lot.
Yeah, but it continues up those stairs next to the pig and goes right across the road there, and that's the other end of that
Take a
too.
little field trip and walk down.
I think that's.
Well, here's the thing.
That's what I'm saying.
We're gonna be I think the bids have to be in by the 27th or something. I mean, it's not like,
It might even be tomorrow.
okay. So, I mean,
I think Michael's correct. I would say though that the easement itself is along that property line. That's why it's the width that it is that show from there. And it used to be the larger property.
Right.
Quick Trip purchased from another buyer. But they do
have
have
the easement.
Yeah, the easement, but they kept that other portion of it and the width of that is actually. So if we ever needed to upgrade at that point, I think if it's still done, you just have obviously the paperwork for these.
21:30
Yeah,
is
well,
the
that's
bid.
my question.
okay.
That's where ownership means you then don't worry about easements.
And
I just, like the idea of being able to have more control over what's dumping in Blackwood Creek, but based on the easement bidding deadline, or not, but the property bidding deadline. I suppose we'll see what happens, I don't really think.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I would just like, how do we keep an eye on that?
Well, it's open record, so
Yeah,
you
I mean-
could call in, or they'll probably do it on Zoom or something. They have to open them to the public. All things like that have to be can't be behind closed doors, at least unless they get some exemption for it, but.
Quick trip super fans gonna buy it.
Just like what we do when we sell it, we have to open them all in the public. You can't hide them. So you could go to the county site and see, there's about 20 parcels they're trying to get rid of. So I'm not sure how much we want to discuss something because we're not in closed session, so we'd have to do it in open session on what we wanted to do.
Oh, it actually says 1,200 is the minimum bid required for this property.
Right.
So you're saying that that's what the county requires, wait, we might be able to get it less.
Correct.
Or
I mean,
assuming
we
one
Take
bid.
no action and what, see what rolls out.
Yeah, that's what happened at the butter factory, one of those buildings the county owned, and there was back taxes of 50,000, they turned it over to the village. Once we had a developer.
Well, can I encourage staff to do that? I mean, some.
What?
to
See what
see-
the
see
end
if we can
result.
actually buy this for $1 or $100 rather than 12.
Well, let's just see what happens with the bid.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, let's keep this active.
I don't think
like,
Caleb's in the bid.
yeah, well, it's.
All right, well, we'll just,
Moving on.
we'll see. All right. So discussion and possible action to adopt the resolution authorizing the sale of 2417 Brewery Road under certain terms and conditions. Any questions on that? This is basically a formality that our attorney felt we should have for the title company when we eventually close.
Do you need a motion?
Yes,
Make the motion that we accept the offer on 2417 Brewery Road, the Village Hall Police Station property.
Second.
Approve the resolution.
And then make a motion to approve the resolution.
That's still second.
all righty. I have a motion and a second discussion. All right, let's do a roll call vote on this one, please.
Trustee Paul McCollum,
No.
trustee Hartman,
Yes.
trustee Brooklyn,
Yes.
trustee Brunner,
Yes.
trustee Bratton,
Yes.
trustee Calvater,
Yes.
president Lightfoot.
Yes. All right, number 5, discussion and possible action on the village police contract. I believe they all got the one that had the changes. So if you like, I can summarize the changes if it's needed, otherwise I don't have to.
Please do.
Okay, so the changes that we had, there were a few little language changes. We ended up on the benefit side, taking 3 days of, officers with 30+ years of service, ended up getting 35 days. We reduced that to 32. And we added 2 days to the officers that have been on for at least a year. That way it brings them up to 12, which is basically 2 rotations, officers work a 6-3. We are giving them every 5 years, $500 towards their protective vests. They usually expire in 5 years. And then for wages, we did 3% this year, 3% next year, with a 1% in December of 2024. And we eliminated we went from the start pay is now at the 18-month versus the start rate in the contract. Those are pretty much the changes that were done. And it's consistent on what we have done with regular staff. Michael, let's get a motion on the table first, then I won't get.
I motion to approve the village police contract.
I'll second that.
All right, so now we're at discussion. Go ahead, Michael.
So the best thing is just in addition to their 525 uniform thing every 5 years, they get $500 for a vest.
Yeah, they run about $800-900.
So then they have to pay out of pocket. for that.
No, they can use their clothing allowance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this,
The problem is you couldn't buy with just your clothing allowance because it's 520, so you kick in that. Now they can buy using their clothing allowance plus have some money for uniforms.
some others.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
And that money is only for a vest. That's why we didn't increase the clothing allowance.
Right.
It's just for the vest.
And it's only available every 5 years.
Right. For a vest.
Yeah, for a vest. Yeah. Yeah, no, I see.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On number 2702, I just have a question about the severance package. So they get a severance package if they retire and retirement paid by employer. I'm confused. We do get a
We didn't
severance-
even talk about that one, but hang on, let me just pull my contract out. So what number are you at?
2702, in the event the employer decides to do, employer dissolves to.
Oh, that's if we dissolve the police department?
Oh, okay. the
That's
whole
what-
department.
Yeah, I think
We're
that's
gonna
what
pay
that is.
everybody 27. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, no, good. Once you got that first sentence, then I said, okay, now I know
No,
what we're talking.
okay.
All right.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Article 12, looking at the changes that we discussed a little bit, which was why we, or was that from input from staff, that we said go from 280 to 256 for over 3 years of service, or just something that didn't, we don't have enough. 10 years?
Here's the thought on that. It's rare to find people that stay in one job for 30 years anymore. And if you think about it, 35 days, that's a lot of vacation days. And yet, the younger generation that's coming in, they really value their free time. So to be more competitive, we wanted to increase the vacation time for the young and remove. We put that in 2024 because I didn't, Scott's retiring and I didn't want to take 3 days away from, so we moved it a day, a year.
Wait, what do you mean you moved it a year?
It's in the
2020.
date, the vacation, the reduction doesn't happen until 2024.
Oh, I get, okay, that's a sentence in years?
Well, it should be, and it was,
It's an amended, I received the amended later today. That was one catch on that. So I was gonna bring that up. And that one line is January 1, 2024.
Oh, there's a
Yeah.
star in there, okay, because I didn't see that red line.
oh, okay, that,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, one more question.
go ahead.
Just wondering what role police unions play in negotiating,
Well, the president of the local and one of their negotiators from the state union was on their side, and it was Brian and I and the chief on the village side.
I guess one
But
is increasing the number of hours for people 2 to 5 years gonna have significant consequences filling the shifts that we sometimes have difficulty filling, since younger officers will now, if there are officers in this time period, will have more time off.
okay, which one are you talking about now?
Well, you're giving people with 2 through 5 years 16 more hours off here, which means you have to
Oh.
cover 2 shifts, which is it a push? Since, Scott has so many, I think it's just like kind of a.
Oh,
It sounds.
overall, it shouldn't make a difference because Scott was taking 35 days.
Right, exactly. Well, that's-
So that should be a wash. That's why we kind of did it that
Yeah.
way. But you're correct that there's 2 more days and they'll come earlier,
Right.
waiting to 30 years, yes,
Right.
but I don't think it's significant.
I agree.
Anything else?
if the union was there to help advocate on behalf of the police and we came to an agreement, let's.
Yeah, and they ratified this already. The officers have ratified it, just so you know.
Fantastic.
That's been ratified, so they're just waiting for us to approve it. So we're good? All right, let's take a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Brunner,
Yes.
trustee Borfund,
Yes.
Trustee Hartman.
Yep.
Trustee Paul Mikowski,
Yes.
trustee Calvater,
Yes.
trustee Bratton,
Yes.
president Langfeld.
Yes. All right, number 6, discussion and possible action, village long-term facility and staffing planning. So this was done, we talked about this a couple times. Actually, their list is right behind you on all both staffing and facilities. To make this a little bit easier, were there anybody here that disagrees in the order of the facilities of priority?
That's all right. So where it says project 1, that's our priority, that's project 2, that's how we did it.
Correct.
Yeah,
One.
yeah, the one that, yep, they voted, this is how the vote came out. And the next step would be to send it to finance to actually put a budgetary timeline, because that's what's really gonna matter. But right now, it's just looking at what they came up with, their justification, and see if it fits in with what we feel is appropriate. Go ahead, Andy.
Just a thought, is, potentially there's opportunities to combine, say, like, project 2 and project, 3. And a lot, there's ways to double up some of the stuff, so as long as that this conversation is happening with the department heads, that's all I just want to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is in the perfect world, get everything done. This is what we would be doing. Yeah. Does anybody have any changes? The only thing I would throw in there is the reservoir. We're gonna need that in. I don't have looking to bump anybody out. It's gonna be when we have a need basis. And we've been told 10 to 15 years, so I guess we'll wait for the finance to come on.
For what?
The reservoir. Remember, we were this close to doing impact fee last year when we did the well. They had a proposal to do a reservoir. And we were looking to put in, but that would require us to start a commitment within 8 years, and we thought that was too tight. So we chose not to do an impact fee for the reservoir. But that doesn't mean we won't need one.
Reservoir, you mean like a
Water
tower
tower.
or something?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
was I saying it wrong?
Well, you're saying reservoir.
I was
thinking
kind
like
of
a lake.
confused, I was thinking like we're building a bacon crossbow.
Yeah.
Oh, no, okay. Right now, we have the little one that's on the hill, right, which is filling up with sand, and then we just have the ones on the hill. So we eventually are gonna need another one. Okay. And we had that discussion a year ago when we were talking about the impact fee for the well. If you remember?
Yeah, I understand, or I was thinking you were talking about the other side of Highway P, the possible storm mitigation.
Oh,
Thing that you're saying.
no.
That was my other thought. Talking about that?
No, it's part of our water system.
So are you saying you want to see that like on the bottom?
Yeah, I would, yeah, I would throw it in. I mean, I guess what I would look at is once the finance looks at this and we have a financial timeline, probably stick it in that 10 to 15, 2032 to 2037 time period, depending on what things, because it's gonna be paid by water anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's not gonna be, but it's still something we should be keeping on the forefront, remembering that we have this coming up. So when developments come in, we need a spot at, what was it, 1140? We need to have it at elevation of 1140, so that's limited on space, PI. We were close to having one, and we talked about it with Sundance, putting one, so. Just to keep it out there, because this is a living document that we want to update, so it's easy to remind if it's written on paper for future boards.
Do we need to make any adjustments to the staffing needs?
Well, that's gonna be the next one.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is, does anybody see any changes that they see in the order of the facilities part?
Not really, like to Andy's part where it says something about, community room and stuff like that, that might actually end up being moved in with other buildings.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. No.
Yep, and that would obviously do it. All right, good. So we're pretty solid. We just have to insert, once finance gets done, insert the reservoir. And we'll go to now the staffing plan. And that's again behind Cody. I believe is the list of the staffing that they came up with. Oh, no, I guess it's behind Doug, that's the side. And that's also in your packet. That's what staff came up with. Judy,
Personally, I
Yep.
think number, where it says staffing positions 2 and 4 for police officers. I think that to me is my number one. I would move the police to make sure we have enough police as number one, sorry, versus, the public service supervisor.
okay, so you'd move both of,
I would move the police in front of the number one. I would move.
well,
that.
number one is library.
Oh, on here is public service supervisor. Oh, that's-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it, it's the libraries.
Yeah, now you had me worried that I typed it
Oh,
wrong.
I would move the police over that.
So behind you would just switch officer with library.
I would put the police, yeah.
And I would do the same.
What's that top?
That top one says we'd rather have the money go towards our current people than hire new people. Something like that. Read it, Doug.
Current staff compensation.
There we go.
And then.
I didn't put it in there because that wasn't part of the tax,
Um,
but I left it
I
there.
have a similar feeling to Judy, but I would switch those two.
Other people?
Could we even move number 3 up, rather than the number 1, just because Parks and Rec actually make us money, it's an income for us. And we need them, and I know we're short staffed in that area too, I would bump them up also and move the supervisor down. I would move the supervisor to number 3, I put police 1 and the Parks and Rec as 2. But that's just my.
No, that's what I'm looking for. This is our call now. I mean, they've done theirs, now we'll do ours. So what are other people's feelings? Because I would like at the end of tonight, have a list from the board, so we combine the two. Cody,
I agree with Judy on both police officer, Parks and Rec, and then the staff supervisor position.
okay, and I see Andy, you're nodding your head. That is an agreement or?
No, I'm just waiting.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to read body language here.
I for the top 3, I don't see a lot of discrepancy in my personal opinion as far as like what's prioritized in the other. I think that I would probably leave the library at number 1 only because of the impact that it has on a day-to-day basis with children in our community. Whereas, I mean, like obviously the police and Parks and Rec are doing the same thing. We're all serving our community in different ways. So it's really hard for me to say like, oh no, we have to prioritize this over that because all 3 departments are doing a whole heck of a lot to support kids and families. So for me, it's tough. So I don't really feel strong enough to say we should change what's been recommended by staff.
Okay, Cameron?
I'm in like a little similar spot, like I wasn't at that conversation, so I feel like I'm missing a whole lot of.
Well, no, you weren't. This is the first, it's been in your packet for 2 months,
No, I
but
know that, but then I guess, I don't know. I would have liked to know why library is at the tipping top. I mean, I can see the stuff in here, but like the staff came to a consensus around.
no, it was not a consensus. Here, okay, the plan was, we did strategic plan. I've been trying to get that. So what I did is start with staff. Staff, give me a strategic plan on facility. Give me a strategic plan on staffing needs, okay? So they met and they discussed things and they came up with this. And I think if you read, is the documentation tied to that with the memos and stuff? The very first, we've had this
Don't
on,
think so.
yeah, everybody did something. So the justifications are here, but this is now, the input is to get policymakers' ideas into it, and then we can merge the two if there's major differences and talk things over. But right now, what as policymakers are you thinking?
Well, for sure, I mean, especially given the stuff in the last couple of meetings, the police officer probably needs to be numero uno. I guess where I was struggling with the difference between the library and the parks, it's not
Okay.
for me to weigh. I mean, I can read here what the responsibility is, but.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Michael, let me go around it then.
Yeah, I have concerns about putting in a new full-time librarian before a full-time police officer. But yet, at the exact same time, when considering this, I do know that the library staff is having a hard time recruiting part-time staff, so I would, as a caveat, if we decide to go with the police officer for a librarian, if we could kick in more money budgetary wise so that the part-time staff at the library is paid more so that they can retain them more and not experience turnover, because that in the long run is going to be a lot cheaper than hiring a full-time librarian if you're able to retain part-time librarians consistently and pay them a little bit. That's my thought on the matter, because I know they have a difficult time retaining staff, part-time staff. I do have, and I do not know reasons. I know that they do not employ high schoolers to work as part-time staff at the library, and I do not know that reason, but I know when I was on the board, someone had suggested to somebody who was in high school that they would thought they'd really work well in the library, and Pam said that she doesn't hire high schools, and I never figured out why. I never knew why. I didn't know why. So maybe that's required by Central that they're not allowed to do that. I don't have any idea, but expanding opportunities for part-time staff and paying them more in the library, something that I think is might be a better solution than hiring a full-time librarian versus a full-time.
Okay,
That's my thought.
okay, no, that's great. I just want to refocus everything. This is a strategic plan for facility and staffing. This is not something necessarily we're gonna do next year. We gotta do a budgetary. That can also, that is the whole thing on pay for librarians and stuff. That's kind of a different issue. I hear how you're applying it, but the bottom line is, it's right now what you think is for a strategic plan. What do we think are the staff we need for full time? So what I'm hearing is, it seems like there is not necessarily consensus, but majority, and at least moving the police officer above the library staff. And then it's, I'm not sure where we sit between the library and the park position. That's kind of where I'm thinking. So again, I guess I will, just to make sure my assumptions, I'm reading people right from listening. Can I just see a show of hands? How many people would move police officer above the librarian position? Okay, so Doug, can you do that? Move that for me, please. Yes. All right, so then the second, what I heard was there was some thoughts on moving the parks position over the library position. Can I see a show of hands on who thinks that would be the move we should make?
You said parks, okay. Yeah.
Above library, because that's what I'm hearing, right? Okay.
Is there also any way to have a crossover position to incorporate the library with parks, which would be super?
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a strategic plan. There's all ways of modifying this to work, and that clearly, potentially, I don't know if we could do it in the position that they're looking at, but there might be somewhere else to do something. I think there's, you know, all right, so Doug, can you move parks?
My justification would be like, I'm sure if parks had another full-time staffer, there's more revenue that they could bring in to the village through the Parks and Rec department to help fund other things within the village, not just Parks and Rec. Yeah, just the additional idea of having that collaboration allows for recruiting a highly qualified human being that can work in both of those venues. And then have that collaboration as a benefit for our community to have kids doing active outdoor learning, facilitated within the library, but also then having that employee available for parks for the variety of reasons that they're currently overwhelmed with this.
And I think more cross training too leads to more familiarity, more partnership, more working together, and also to help cover vacations and things like that. certain roles you can do that in, but certain ones you can't, but park and rec and library, I think would be one.
Okay, so everybody satisfied with what the two lists are on the board there? All right, can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion to, reprioritize.
Hold it, Mike.
Can I get a clarification? So police officers, wasn't there two police officers?
Yeah, it's, the other one is still down.
Oh,
Just under the library.
Just all the way. Oh, I'm sorry, I have one more thing to say before the motion going. I see the number of calls that increased over the last 3 years, and I appreciate the data and the documentation. I'm curious if it's just, that is people's reaction to, instead of talking to people, they call the police. And so I think it's a natural phenomenon. We're gonna see more police calls regardless of whether population is increasing or decreasing across places or anywhere for that matter. I just think if we go the route, we need to incorporate that thought process into our decision making regarding that sort of data.
I agree with that, and I clearly think that is something that the public safety committee could work on how do we get people comfortable in talking to each other instead of always formalizing it. That's what you're, in the old days, the neighbors took care of each other. They didn't call the cops on the kid, they corrected the kid, you know. Yeah, no, I would agree with you 100% on that.
You do also have 3 more developments going on, so we do have more future.
Right, and there's the whole thing of increasing the hours of coverage. You know,
At some point, we have to.
Yeah.
By 24 hours.
yeah, correct. So we gotta slowly move that way. Okay, so we have the motion and the second.
No, we don't.
Oh, we don't have a second?
No,
Oh,
yeah, you don't need to.
We don't
Oh, I thought we did a motion. I was starting to.
Yeah, go ahead. Can I go back to the, I have a question about the pool for the public facilities campus one. Is this just an idea that's been picked out there because they're outgrowing that facility, a possible expansion?
That is part of it, but it's also trying to get efficiencies by bringing things together. I mean, consolidating, yeah, because we're gonna be looking for a compost site again. You know, if, as Jerry said, if we had more space, we could buy piping, water piping and sewer piping. So we can do some of the stuff ourselves. So it's the big idea of it. And then what he did is he broke it down into like phases.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so I think it's clearly the way to go. Are we gonna be able to afford to go that way? We don't know that.
Okay, that was, yeah.
Yeah.
Just-
And this is your strategic plan.
The pie and it's an idea.
Yeah, yes, yes.
I got it, yeah.
I'll make a motion to reprioritize as discussed, having police officers, which is adopt and then parks.
For the staffing,
For the staff,
staffing, facility stays, we're in agreement.
just on the staff.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. All right, let's do a roll call vote. Any other discussion? I'm sorry.
Did we want to include in that the possible collaboration between parks and library position?
What I would like to do with that is, now that we have this set, I would like to go to finance, so we have a budgetary thing, and then we should kick it down to the committees to look at how they can implement or combine things or make things more efficient. That's how I think we should do it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how, that's generally not part of, I mean, we can put it in that that's what we want to be done, but just like mentioned, we may be able to combine some of those things together. It's just, it would go endless with all the possibilities. This is just trying to get us where we can turn something over to the next board, the next employees that are department heads kind of see where we're looking at. And this will get filled in. I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Well, right, I understand, but if that's not in the motion and the department says change, they go, well, the order they told us was police, parks, library. They might not realize the symbiosis of the idea.
Well, no, this is gonna be
One idea.
this is gonna be a report. Okay, so my vision is, I'm gonna type this up just like I did for staff. They'll be together. All the documentation from staff will be together, and it's a report. So someone can pick that up and say, hey, in 2022, this is what they talked about. And I'm hoping in 2024, we update it again, because it's gonna change, right? That we keep moving it forward so everybody sees that. And then these things play into it, because you're right, it may be where we come up with a hybrid. That takes a breath, right?
Sorry, I just want to reiterate a little bit here, that for revenue that the department, brings in. This position that we're talking about up here is pretty much a park maintenance position. It's not a recreation position. Now, it's not differentiated within that. It's for the most part talked about the land management and acres that we have playgrounds. And it could be a hybrid position within that, right? It could maybe be something within parks like that. I really would have to throw up probably a red flag and trying to make that help within the library unless it's maintenance type positions within the library. Otherwise, you're looking for a hybrid type of person. And then we kind of just to think about it, trying to really.
Yeah, I would piggyback off that, and even though it's an awesome idea, those individuals tend to be hard to find because of the skill set they have to have in a variety of different disciplines, and also traveling between different departments and working with two different departments is also a challenge because the more people you work with, the more challenging it is.
More bosses.
Yeah, right. The other thing I would just add to this, general speaking, is obviously we have the top bullet points from every department head as far as why they should, be listed the way they are on this particular priority list. I just think hearing from them individually at the board level would have been very productive because then you can ask clarifying questions and make a more comprehensive decision. It would be good.
Well, they could have, I mean, they could have been here. They knew, I didn't keep this a secret from them. They knew the different steps we were gonna do. So. Anyways, this again, it's not locking anything in. It's a strategic plan to look at and put the finances together, and it's gonna come back again and we'll be modifying it numerous times. All right, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Calvater,
Yeah,
trustee Bratton,
Yes.
trustee Brunner,
Yes.
trustee Brooklyn,
Yes.
trustee Hartman.
Yeah.
Trustee Polakowski,
Yes.
president Langfeld.
Yes. All right. Number 7, discussion and possible action regarding the 2023 budget and the adjustment plan. So this is, kind of I think how we'll do it. Let's do the adjustment plans first. And the reason I say that, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time. What I did is I went through everybody's plans and I kind of grouped them and did a summary here. Now, the next step I'd like to do is Brian and I'll sit down and we'll decide where these should be, followed up on and looked into and stuff. So some will go to committee, some will go to staff, some will come to the board. So unless people really want to go through each of them, what I would, just to speed it up, would be Brian and I would sit down and figure out who should be doing the follow-up and on that, and then we bring them back as they're ready. Go ahead, Judy.
I have a good question.
Sure.
For number B, it says create a transportation utility. What is that?
That's where, it's where you charge people basically by how much street is in front of your house. It's a state law that allows you to do that. So it becomes a utility. So it's like sewer and water, it doesn't go against the cap.
So
And
each
it's really-
house gets- Huh?
It's a fee.
Yeah,
For each
It's
house?
not in the general tax.
yeah. I thought we had, didn't we bring a report to them? Finance looked at that. There was probably 6 months ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. It was the same thing we did the wheel tax.
I remember talking about the wheel tax. I don't remember talking about that.
Well, that would be, but what I'm saying, that would be something we could bring back,
Oh, sorry.
No, there's no apology.
You're just brainstorming ideas.
Yeah, right. And now what we have to do is look into them. Some of them are real easy. So like, eliminating the cable here in the village. That's something we should talk to staff about. Do they need it anymore? What is it being used for? If it's not, does anybody really care if we eliminate it or not? I mean, there's small things like that that I think can be handled pretty quickly. When you talk about moving recycling to a fee structure, that is a little bit more complicated because you just can't just do that. There's a lot of rules to it. And then again, it shows up on the property taxes as a fee versus part of the general taxes. I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons to a lot of these, but they weren't meant to be decided tonight because clearly we don't have the information that we need. But that was part of the, one of the requirements for this year's budget. I think there's some really good ideas that we should really look into and committees should look into and see what kind of savings we can do. Cameron?
I see one, at least one of these, and it's not a big cost savings, but there's the text my go thing. We pay
Yeah.
$100. I mean, the auto renewal for that one is coming up in like 6 days. I mean, assuming we're not gonna do anything between now and when that comes
I'm
out.
fine with getting rid of that, from what I read.
Well, I know, but right, I think we need to look at, I agree with you right now with only, but there's two options. Because if you remember when that was presented to us, that was our mechanism to let people know in the community emergency. So while the question is, did we fail in advertising it, or is there a failure and people not really caring to do it? I mean, I think there needs to be a discussion. I don't think we're prepared to do any of these tonight. Agreed. I think we gotta look at them a little deeper than what is. I think there's great things to be talked about because I do think there's some savings in there, but let's, just because there's only 30 people, I'm not sure we automatically get rid of it. I'm with you if only 30 people wanted to, but my question is, what's our mechanism then to let people know about emergency? So we need to have a little bit of discussion. Maybe there's something else out there. How does that sound to everybody? Is that a plan? Everybody okay with Brian and I sitting it down? And so you can expect some of these to be coming to your committees then. Or for follow-up. All right, so then on the draft budget, everything pretty much what we have talked about is in the budget. So if there's something that you want discussed, then the motion should be to remove it from the budget. Otherwise, it's in the budget. All right, so all the base budget, the subs, that has all been placed in this budget. So if you want to change, then it needs to have a motion to have it removed or shifted to a different line item. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, so, Brian, you want to start? Because I know you have at least one.
So in our department head meeting, our most recent department head meeting, talking about some of the salary adjustments, request was made from a majority of village department heads to consider utilizing the money that was currently set up as part of the sustainability committee grant writing endeavor, and instead propose using that to increase some of the line worker wages to give them a 1% wage increase. So that was one thing that needed to be brought up for discussion this evening.
It's 1% above the 3.
Above the, yes, correct, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you need 4.
And when you say some of the money, you mean all of the money?
Correct. All of the $5,000 that's set aside for that would be utilized towards increasing the and making an above the 3%, an additional 1%.
Big question for Bobby. Is this a complete budget, like are all the numbers in, like health insurance and with everything, or is anything missing?
We have everything.
Okay, just because I know sometimes things come in later, we don't know. Wondering how.
I mean, the only thing is that is missing is we don't have all the levies from the county and the school district and all that to calculate the fit amount. Increment, but that won't change.
And what is considered a line?
Consider what?
Like who is asking specifically for the $5,000 from the grant writing?
It would be non-management. Would be the best, so it's mostly non-department and some of the people right below that level.
Yeah.
So this would be everybody that is not in that position.
Can I hear Mike Axon's thoughts on that? The conversation we had about the $5,000 for sustainability grant.
To be used for current staff.
Yeah.
So I guess, department head's discussion on that topic item is that we felt that we should be putting more money towards our support staff than, consultants running outside. To be working on some of these things. We weren't given a ballpark number, we just realized that in the budget constraints that $5,000 could be used for. our staff.
Was there any discussion about that money benefiting those staff members if we receive grants that would then provide some sort of relief in other ways? I think maybe aren't just in monetary, because the 1% raise to support staff members probably gonna amount to about $200 a year versus some massive project that the village gets access to funds to that kind of thing at all.
Any other questions, thoughts?
Do you think that would happen with the fear staff per se, kind of raise them around a little bit, and make you more happy, and people will be significant enough to put them in a little bit better mood, if you will?
I think any amount of money to increase for our support staff is more beneficial.
All right, I'll get the ball rolling. I'll make a motion that we shift the $5,000 from the grant consultant to a 1% raise for our support staff. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion and a second discussion.
So my next question is gonna be, what positions are we talking about, generally speaking? If I can get a list of those positions.
See if I can find it.
And is $5,000 enough to provide 1% of those calls?
Just about.
What support staff would not be included in that?
No, everybody's, we'd have to come up with, like, if I remember right, another 1,100.
For all the staff but managers.
What,
Is that just gonna be?
what level of raises did support staff get this year?
3%.
I guess my challenge or my issue with this generally is we had an opportunity to put forward supplemental requests. We could have put supplemental requests forward. We could have asked for a 1% raise for support staff if that was something that department heads and village president thought was going to be significantly important to maintain morale and return of support staff. Instead, what we're doing is taking the supplemental request for an entirely different purpose and changing its intent. That's what I don't understand. Why is this a priority now? Or was this priority weeks before we introduced the supplemental request?
I guess I'm gonna disagree with that summary. I think last year, we made an effort here in the board to say we needed to move the salaries of our staff up. And you can't do it all in 1 year. We decided we're gonna do it in 2. When the supplement budgets were in, it didn't include salary. We pulled that out of the base budget so we would have an individual discussion to continue with that goal to do that. So we did the budget numbers and we put in the 3%. That was in the budget memo. And there was no argument that I heard from anybody to say that wasn't. When we did the numbers, we felt that it was important to, if we could give our staff, our support staff, an extra 1%. So the question comes, where do you get the money? So we said, is it, and you look at that list on there, and this was from way back on the strategic planning. They put it in their memo to me, plus on the bulletin board that they wanted money towards staff salaries. So that was an avenue to boost those lower salaries without increasing the levy that we're gonna put on our taxpayers. So it was a matter of making a choice. What is more important? 5,000 to a consultant that we may or may not get a grant, or to give it to our staff right there. We've already been hearing that it's difficult to recruit staff because our salaries are low. The only way to solve that is to increase salaries. And was an effort not only with the discussion here for our regular staff, but if you look at the police contract, it was the same thing, trying to get the lower levels bumped up. Our department heads and everything are doing okay. It's the lower starting group that we need to work. So it was a choice. And this was just a choice we're throwing to the board. Would it be better to put that $5,000 towards our staff or a consultant for a grant? It comes down to that.
You're framing the argument completely wrong, actually. That's not the argument. The frame of it is we're not giving it to a consultant versus our staff. We're giving it to a consultant to provide a better working environment for our staff.
You're
That's
making an
the frame.
assumption, Andy. You have no idea where that 5,000 is gonna go.
Anytime that we are increasing and benefiting the working conditions of people who work in the village, making their jobs, we're making the village more sustainable, we're gonna have a ripple effect positively.
But you're making the assumption because we hired someone, we're gonna get the grant. How many grants have we put in that we haven't received? And we paid big money for it. I don't think because you pay a consultant 5,000, you're gonna get the grant. We could spend the 5,000 and get zero money.
I would love to see the data that you brought to me and show me how many.
Jewel, I'll give you the whole Jewel consultant of when we were trying to do flood mitigation. Everybody here knows that we did that. We got zero out of it.
But that would be a pertinent.
The reason we didn't get that is because we didn't own the property.
I understand that.
Fundamental, like, continue
Well,
getting the grant.
I understand the reason why, Michael, but just because we spend the money doesn't mean you're gonna get the money.
I understand.
It-
But it was.
Well, I understand, but he wanted an example. I can give you a booklet, this thing from Jules on it.
I would love to see it, but this is the time you need to see it, Jay, not later from today.
Okay.
So the other point is, you know, and again, this is my problem with the way you frame things, is you're saying anybody who supports allowing $5,000 for grant writing for the environment, for sustainability, planning in the village is somehow against support staff, which is.
No, I'm not saying that. You're saying that.
That's the way it's being framed.
There you go.
Want to give it,
There's the,
do you want to give it to staff or do you want to give it to some wealthy consultant?
I'm not saying, it's a choice. Are you disagreeing that it's not a choice?
That's not the way in which I view the $5,000 is that I'm handing it off to some wealthy lawyer.
I never said anything about wealthy. I didn't say anything about lawyer.
It's loaded language, Jim. Just
Well,
admit it.
It's not voted, it's a choice. My choice is, and if you can see, one of the choices for saving money, I said we try to cut our consultant fees by 1%. That's $5,000 right there. We spend over 500,000 for consulting. So,
Okay,
so Andy, you can look at it and interpret it, and I'm just putting it out there that, in my opinion, that $5,000 could be spent better towards our staff than to a consultant trying to get a grant.
I think pigeonholing it into sustainability, I think is the crux of the ask from the sustainability department, is that this particular amount of money is designed just to go after grants that are dealing with the sustainability plan that we as a board approved in November. That's why it's on the table. That's why sustainability has been asking for it. That's why Melissa and the team wrote the memo to the board. All of that. I also support more than a 3% raise for all of our support staff. And I think we can do both, right? So it's not an and or, it's a let's do both.
Well, I'm gonna disagree. I think our taxpayers would kind of differ with you on that. The money's coming out of their pocket. They're working very hard. They're dealing with inflation. I mean, how much are we gonna hit the taxpayers for? They're getting the same. They're dealing the same thing that we're dealing with.
Again, I think the taxpayers have elected us to make decisions on their behalf, and one of those impacts could be sustainability grant that lowers costs overall in the long term for the village, which turns out to save taxpayers money. And these are decisions that we're trying to make as the board of trustees, and this is the way that I think is going to get us there the quickest.
All right, I'm not gonna. Anybody else wanna go into this, Michael?
Just caveat, we're talking support staff receiving 3, management staff receive like 5, right? Is that correct, like 5%?
No,
Or,
You're across the board.
it's three across the board from what they earned last year.
oh, okay, I thought for some reason.
You're right, because what we're doing is ending the merit pay. So they were, last year, if you remember, we took half the merit pay and put it into salaries, permanent salaries for support staff. Then they ended up getting merit pay. So now that has been incorporated into their salary and they get a 3%. So they're technically making 3% more than they did last year. All right, any other discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please. The motion is to shift the $5,000 towards 1% for support staff.
Trustee Hartman,
I'm gonna go on that.
sorry, I already said he's like pretty popular. Trustee Berman,
Yes.
trustee Brunner,
Yes.
trustee Bratton,
Yes.
trustee Calvater, trustee Palmkowski,
No,
president Langfeld.
Yes. So what was the vote there? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
Okay.
yeah, we're passing. Are there any other things people want to bring up? Because I'll make a motion to remove the money from for the part-time police officer.
yeah, what do you?
I am making a motion to remove the funds for the part-time police officer position.
And then add that.
Well, yeah, that's the motion. If we have a second, we can get into discussion.
You're just generalizing saying removing the part-time position money from the budget.
Well, I'm eliminating, I'm making a motion that we don't go ahead with the part-time officer, so then we wouldn't spend the money, correct?
Don't want to second it until we talk about alternatives.
Well, you have to second it, then we can have the discussion. It can always be voted down, but that's how,
Sure, okay,
are you gonna second it?
fine.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We'll open it up. This is how government should work, all right? It's not a bad thing. Just because you second it doesn't mean you agree to it. Doesn't, even when I make the motion, doesn't necessarily agree to it. But, so you have seen the memo that I have written, you've seen the chief's response to it. So I'm just looking for what people are thinking.
But before we move on to that, can I just clarify one thing from the outcome of the vote? Did we just also approve then another $1,100 to ensure that we have 1% raise for all support staff?
No,
We just moved the 5,000.
5,000.
And so at some point, we're gonna come back and talk about how we're gonna spend that 5,000 and whether or not we're gonna increase it.
No, what'll come back is I will give you a plan where the 1,100 is coming from. If we need the 1,100.
Okay.
Again, you know. Yes,
I was gonna say the budget as it's presented has both in it currently.
Because both what?
So 1% and the 5.
oh, that's right. So it's already, that's the right, thank you. So that,
So you just be removing, taking 5,000.
yes, that's correct.
So that's what we, with that 4 to 2 vote, 5,000 was removed from that budget, as the budget then was presented, okay.
All right, so now we're on the police officer position. Comments or any thoughts on that?
I got
Andy.
a, we just reordered everything up here behind me, so the police is the predominant focus of priority, so I am really confused how we remove this, like in any way, shape, or form.
Well, okay, the removal is, if you read the memo, my argument is we're going with part-time, which is a very small Band-Aid to solving the problem. The best solution, and people, at least 3 trustees and even the chief, the position is, the best solution would be full-time, hire another full-time. So then
Why are we doing that?
well, because that was not, that's my point, Andy. That's what I'm
Well, if
agreeing.
we could take the supplemental from the last purpose and transition it into a completely new purpose, wouldn't we be able to do this supplemental and do the exact same thing?
Absolutely.
Why do we just make a motion to remove it? Why don't we make a motion to amend it that provide for a full-time police officer?
Because that should be 2 different motions. Because the hiring of an officer, I would have stipulations to that, and it's not an automatic. I would have stipulation that we get grant funding for it. All right, so I don't know why you're shaking your head. It's really simple. One is, do you want, my notion is to have full-time instead of part-time. All right, and right now I don't have that. My option now is to remove the part-time, so we don't. If I add a motion to hire another police officer, now we're hiring police officer plus a part-time officer.
I think my problem is you just handed me a packet saying grant writing does not do anything. We waste a ton of money doing it. So for you to say that we should put an officer position with grant funding, that's what I'm shaking my head.
Well, Andy, the difference is, I'm not asking for $5,000 to give to the public safety to write a grant for the police officer. That's the difference. What I'm saying is staff writes the grant for the police officer, and we don't spend $5,000 on someone to write a grant we can write. There's the difference.
Okay.
All right. Any other people's, okay, Doug,
I'll be voting no one.
all right.
As well.
I'd like to ask Chief Tony, how do you feel about it? Right.
They already know, so I feel like it's been challenged multiple. That's why I responded to it. I think the cops grants are great. I mean, they fund positions. We got one in the 1996. So this was as you see some of my comments, this was a program that started in '94. It was a lot easier in the mid '90s to get these cop grants because it was new, it was a new program. A lot of agencies were jumping on board and there was a lot less red tape. Those things have changed. I was on the phone with Washington DC talking specifically to the cops office just to garner some what it would take. And there is a lot of paperwork with the cops grant. There's a lot of documentation that goes in that. I'm not afraid to do work. I will do work. The thing is that these grants they only fulfill once a year. So as you see the timeline, by the time I would see any kind of benefit from a full-time position, if everything went perfect and the grant was approved and we actually got one, you're looking somewhere in 2024 by the time I have somebody in place. So it's to me, yes, you guys are right. Jay is perfectly right. This is a Band-Aid to a much bigger problem, but it's a Band-Aid and it will help me stop the bleed a little bit. There was some good points made by Jay. We are going to be losing an officer who has 35 days of vacation, picking up 25 days. But if you do the math, that's what I'm working extra. So that's a wash. Now I won't have to work all those extra hours if we even get part-time officers. I also want to clarify what I meant by I don't like the program. So I don't like part-time officers in lieu of full-time officers because of the training and the mechanism that goes behind it. There are a couple big points that Jay made, and I think they'll be well received by me. As far as paying officers higher amounts than your full-time officers, I would be just fine paying them the same amount that our starters get, which would be 2712. It's not gonna make or break that. As far as my staff, everything that I have done since I started here has involved my staff, so this is no different. When I told them about the part-time program, we had meetings on it, I had individual contacts with every one of them. Everyone supports it. They support the program, they support the pay, even at $30 an hour. I only had one officer that was kind of like me, reserved on part-time staffing. Having them on board, coming in and out, and you know, it is gonna leave some extra work for officers because they're a body. So they show up, they're gonna work that day and we may not see them for a month, so. But it's no different than what we're doing now. You know, I work really well with the West Precinct. If something major comes in here, I reach out to them and take over their investigation. So they're also doing part-time work, if you will, if you look at it that way. I just would like to try this. And the other thing with this is that we are going to be losing staff. As I pointed out, in the next couple of years, we're losing, you know, 3 people, and I have another officer that's looking at some advancement. A younger officer looking at advancement up north. I can't stop them from doing these things, and actually, we're supposed to be promoting those things, right? There isn't a lot to promote officers here, so if there's opportunities, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So I could see some change. Part-time officers could be a pool, but I'm not going to guarantee anything because the city that I came from, we had a very extensive part-time roster, so you know, we hardly went through any kind of hiring process because they were, you know, there were new recruits and it was someone left and someone moved in, and it was, we already had them tested and ironed out, but we used a lot of a lot of part-time because we were required to cover 24 hours. We could not have one single hour open in the city of Darlington. So with 5 full-time staff, that was very tedious. So we had to have a very robust part-time, so they were always working. You know, we had a pretty healthy part-time budget. I just want to try it, that's all. You know, and to your point, you're right. I think there's 2 facets why our complaints are going up. We're seeing an increase in call volumes. People are calling us more for stuff that maybe 5 years ago they wouldn't have called, maybe pre-COVID stuff that they would have just handled it. People socialize a little differently even through this COVID. But I also, in my time here, have really pushed community policing, and that has created a lot of extra work. Because the more you're in your community, the more you're involved with the community, the more they want to involve you in their problems and concerns. And so it's a catch-22. So if we could take a more of a hands-back approach, I don't like that. Proactive policing is where it's at, and the more we get out there, the more people call us for stuff. You know, they feel more comfortable with the police department. Matter of fact, some of the complaints I get is other agencies handling our calls because they're used to that customer service of a small town, and so that's telling of the staff. So this part-time program, it was in place at some point because the line item exists. Jay told me he was going to go against it, and I told Jay that's fine. I'm going to go against you, and that's fine. You know, it's up to you guys. That's, you know, I have an opinion on it, but I feel strongly about it. But again, we will continue to serve the community whether I have it or not. The other thing is, if we ever get to a full-time position, I would probably be the first one to come in here and say, get rid of the part-timers because we need a full-time.
Could you, if we do, I approve the part-time, could you still write for a grant and that would
Yeah.
stop you from writing for a
Yeah,
grant?
no, I think now that, I mean, I've talked about cops grants when I first started, like, you know, what have we done with them? These are from the 90s, and in talking to my partners, you know, other chiefs in the area, they don't even write them because they don't compete. And like a Madison's going to get them. They're geared toward sparse communities with controversial issues and community-oriented stuff. And some of us aren't going to fare, you know, that. But doesn't mean we don't try. And matter of fact, when I talked to the program person in Washington, D.C., they said for sure try. I mean, it doesn't hurt. It's free money, right? So we should try. Especially now that we have our grant policy written out, how it's gonna be, you know, I mean, this is something that we would get a percentage, and then you guys would have to find the money 3 years later, so obviously that's something that the policy would have to, you know, take into play. I mean, definitely, I mean, if this is something people are interested in, we can definitely explore it and,
Would you, like some funds to allow professional grant writers to come to that trial? I knew you were.
I knew that was coming too, I was just waiting.
So I guess I'm not opposed to the part-time police, but when you came to us last time, what I was hearing was, I need something, I know I can't get a full-time officer, so this is what I'm asking for. And I guess like, I mean, we all want to support a full-time officer, so I guess that's what I'm kind of stuck on here.
I'm
Do you
just
need-
trying to be.
Do you need both?
No, I need a full-time officer, and I
Okay.
probably could use two. If you ever want to get to 24-hour coverage, you need 2
Right.
hours. At minimum. Right now, we're 13 investigations in the hole, that we're working ourselves through. Yeah, we need the staff, right? We're busy, super busy. But I also want to be fiscally responsible, and I also don't want to, you know, you got to remember that I'm a department head, and I have to work with my other department heads. And to sit here and just say public safety is the most important, that's easy. I can do that all day. But the reality is, if you're a team player with the rest of the department heads, this is the right way to do it, is figure out what's most important. I mean, I didn't vote for library on top of police officer for sure, but it was a vote and I supported it, you know, what came out of it. I think your best bet is to start looking at full-time officers. I also think the best bet is to start looking at 24-hour coverage. I mean, Darlington has 24-hour coverage with 2,400 people. We are, just the other night, I was off at 10 o'clock. I had to work 2 16-hour shifts because people were on vacation and somebody called in sick because they had COVID. So I promised you all 16 hours. I gave you 16 hours. I was here Wednesday and Thursday, 6 a.m., 10 p.m. I covered the shifts. That's not sustainable, and it's actually not even healthy to do that too often, right? But an hour and 15 minutes after I left, there was a call into the village of a person who was having some kind of psychotic episode, and deputies couldn't get to him right away. And by the time they got to him, ambulance was called. We should have been out there. We should have been able to provide services. So we're at that stage. This town does not sleep. People are driving through here all night long, and there's issues all night long. We follow up on everything the next day. We try to do our very best the next day, so that increases our call volumes. I think that that's the responsible thing to do, is start looking at finances. How can we do this? How can we create a 24-hour department? Does that mean changing the 6-3 rotation to a 12-hour shifts? What does that mean? I mean, there's a lot of options to get that done. But for now, I just would support a part-time program to see what we're gonna get. I could come back to you next year and say, I got nobody applied, sorry. So, I mean, that would be telling, obviously, but I'd like to try, that's all.
I'll just make a comment on the paradigm shifts and the changes in employment and the way people work differently through COVID. There's a lot more people gigging it or consulting or doing part-time things. And there's ways that it's a big advantage. When I left Springs, I consulted for 6 months to finish a couple projects. I got paid more, but I didn't take any benefits. I got paid a higher hourly wage. You don't know what you're gonna find. I think there might be an opportunity to find something good. There might be an opportunity that this is a niche and a bridge to get to 24/7, because we can't just turn a switch on and lose people's access like that. There's a balance. It's part of the yard signs, it's part of the public safety committee talking about engaging community policing. If we take care of more of our own problems and or follow our own traffic rules and follow the signs that are there, instead of always asking for the new sign or somebody else to be responsible for my public safety. Chief, my name is terrible, they make all kinds of noise. Why don't you handle it instead of you knocking on the door? I think there's opportunities. And I know in the business that I recruit and train people for, it's a lot different than it was 5 or 10 years ago. You know, we're using more part-time, but we're using more consultants. We're actually having some people who left the field come back. Some people's retirements are hurting. Some people, you know, make bad investments or choices. You know, I think there's worth taking a look at, trying something, see if it works. We have the priorities, we all agree to the priorities, full-time fine. And I think this is an opportunity to see what's out there, see if chief on the staff can make one.
Andy?
I mean, we obviously use a lot of part-time teachers in Middleton Crossland area school district as well, and a lot of those teachers have become our best employees over the years. So again, we don't know what's gonna happen, what kind of candidates are gonna put their hat in the ring, so to speak, but it is a really good opportunity to bring somebody who's gonna be a long-term serving member. I also know one of the priorities of all department heads is we have a lot of retirements coming up in a lot of different places. And so having an open position in the near future for somebody who takes this part-time is likely to take place. One of the points that we brought up in a previous memo was about the discrepancies in pay hourly for part-time versus full-time. My wife happens to find herself in a part-time position in addition to a full-time position at the children's hospital, making almost double the hourly wage that her fellow PTs make on full-time salary. And that's just the nature of the game. When we have to fill positions, when we need positions, we have to compensate people. We're very qualified to do that in the interim. And I always like trying new things. Like let's investigate it, let's see what happens, let's see who we come up with. If it works, phenomenal. And then we are likely in the very near future to have a full-time position open up for anybody to be hired part-time.
Well, if I can. I'm not a big fan of part-time, and there's reasons for that. They're not committed to the community. They're here. Like the chief said, you have 5 part-timers, you may see them, you know, 6 times a year. They're gonna put in their time, do what's needed. They don't build the relationship. But the main reason and why a lot of police unions don't go for them, it's interesting that you said Darlington runs 24 with mostly part-time. That's the whole thing. Where you have your police department is basically because it's cheaper to run on part-time than have full-time. And if you're looking just at the finance part of it, you guys are absolutely right. You're not paying health insurance, you're not paying retirement, you're not doing a lot of things that cost an extra 30–40%. But you do lose that officer feeling part of the community. You look at, I mean, Scott, 34 years here. You know, you're not going to get the same type of service or understanding of the community that Scott has with part-time. I look at Nikki, another one who's been here very long. Look how embedded. You're not going to have a part-time do national night out and stuff. And I somewhat worry because boards, and if we get close to the levy limit, which we are, we're going to take the cheaper route, which is to hire more part-time than full-time. And I know a lot of businesses, that's why they're going with part-time, because it's cheaper in the long run to hire part-time than long-time. But I just don't know if that's better for the community, for the police department, and quite frankly, for private businesses necessarily, if you don't have that loyalty, commitment, and understanding of the community. So I'm just throwing that's out. That's kind of the danger that sometimes you are.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So my response to that is that's your department head, your supervisor, that needs to make sure that when we're hiring, that you're not just hiring a body. Of course, they're a body, you need to be here limited amount of times, but you don't allow that to ever be really part of it. So I'm very strong community, I would never put anybody in that position. And if I saw that they're at-will employees, they wouldn't be working here very long. If they hurt our department in any way, shape, or form, they just wouldn't be around for very long. And so that would fall under me to monitor. But you were right. I don't think that this is what we should go for. I don't think we should maintain a part-time program to really fill these positions. I think it's a temporary fix, but I really think that the board needs to do their due diligence to get 1 or 2 positions and get us a 24-hour coverage at some point, sooner than later would be nice.
Andy?
Another thought that hasn't been brought up yet is, you know, I mean, we've been discussing the medical as a band-aid here, and Chief just described 2 16-hour shifts to cover 16-hour coverage for the village by himself. You know, how much money we're gonna spend when we have to replace our chief of police because they can't sustain their job because we're not supporting them enough. That's gonna be thousands of dollars into itself. So I think in the interim, let's do what we can to show good faith that we prioritize based on what we just talked about. And provide the opportunity to just put this person in a position to help our chief and the rest of our community.
And I agree with you, Andy, 100% on that. The only thing is, 100%, the only thing is, $10,000 to me, it's just 41 shifts out of, that's not even one a week. How much relief is that really giving? That's where I'm coming from. I think the solution is to go and get them full-time. I mean, that's just where, I'm not saying not hire anything. My whole thing is focus and work on getting the full-time, because that will give relief. It gives us one step closer to getting that 24-hour coverage. Because right now, we're just trying to maintain the best we can at 16. I'm just, that's not me. I think we should be working towards the 24 hours. Cameron.
What's the time difference? Because like, there's obviously a large cost difference between a full-time officer and a part-time officer, but like, if we just hypothetically said, we don't want to do this because we want to give Chief Tony a full-time employee as soon as possible. What are the steps that need to happen? Not 2023. Is that like, where, how does that happen?
Well, you'd have to plan it, and we'd have to, with the budget, the numbers that was given during this process was 80,000. Yeah, so that's something we have to come up with.
Yep.
You know, so that would take, I don't think we have time before this has to go in to do something like this, but it's not something we can't look into for next year. When I looked at the cops hiring, I think their deadline is June. I'm not sure what the turnover is in to get you the money. I didn't read that deep into it.
So when I called them, they said June ends the deadline, then they take a few months and try to get a decision done by the end of the year. Of who are the recipients? So I'm kind of thinking November, December with holidays. We're probably looking, at the beginning of 2024 before if we're a recipient. And that's like anything, like you guys had a long discussion, heated, good discussion about grants. You're right, we're just applying. It doesn't mean you're gonna get anything, So I think we almost have to plan that we won't get something, and how are we gonna commit some of these funds, but it doesn't mean not try.
And that's what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about the contract, I was talking, if we needed a full-time officer, what is the timeline from where we are now?
Yeah. Right. I would say we could probably, I would say minimum 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
And then that's prior to the hiring, to actually get a cop and train.
Right. Yeah, Chief Tony said it takes a couple months. Yeah.
Judy?
And I just want to clarify, so knowing Scott is retiring, we still will replace him.
Yes, we approved that
We
last
already
meeting.
did that, yeah, I wasn't
Already.
clear by that, but
Yes, we approved that last. All right, so, any other discussion? Otherwise, just so everybody's clear, a no vote means you want to keep the part-timers. A yes vote means we're pulling the money out, just so everybody's clear on that.
Yeah.
All right, roll call vote.
Trustee Brooklyn,
I have a clarification. This is your motion that was taken out.
Right, so.
My
no vote
remember I
means
said,
we
yeah,
want-
the motion was to remove it.
Yeah, that's clear. Thank you.
Yeah,
No.
trustee Hartman,
Motion is to remove it. No.
trustee Palmakowski,
No.
trustee Calvater,
No,
trustee Brad,
No.
trustee Brunner,
no.
president Langfeld.
Yes. The motion fails. All right, any other,
We don't need another motion, we're keeping it in, right?
yeah, everything's, what we decided, Bobby and I, to make it easier to keep track, we pulled things out. Then it'd be less than trying to add everything. Okay, so are there any other budget, from the draft budget changes that people would want to make to the budget? Otherwise, we're moving this to November for ratification, or does it go to December?
No, it's gotta be November.
November, so the November meeting is the final vote on it.
I would request $5,000 for
We already voted tonight. You can, if you want to bring it back for reconsideration, you can. You can do that. All right. So number 8 is going, we took from the consent agenda, which is the sewer adjustment request. Judy?
So I know we've talked about this before, and this is always a big pet peeve, but when did we decide, what did we decide? Are we doing this as a blanket that everybody gets this, or only the people that can complain?
No, we had a
You had-
very,
Yeah, we have very deep, what remind me?
okay, what we did is we had a very strong, long discussion, and then Cameron brought up what Eau Claire was doing, so we tabled it and we went and did research on, what I'll call the Eau Claire model. That was turned down, and then there were suggestions on what we need to do in the future, so these don't come up. That procedure and process or policy, whatever you want to call it, has not been written.
Okay.
So we're basically right where we were at the beginning of that discussion. So I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a group that gets together, and you had some good suggestions, other people had suggestions that we have to come up with a process or a policy. So Jerry's not just basically winging it.
I really think a lot of it is, I think it needs to be a blanket, like if it needs to be a blanket, all or none. So I'm actually gonna vote no for number 7. I'm, because they are all, unless we take them all apart, A through G, but I just feel like we had this conversation.
But Jerry does have a process. I mean, this water didn't go through the sewer. That's why it's giving a break.
Right, but they're not the only ones. I'm sure there's other.
If you remember, her comment
before.
before was some people are just eating it. If we're applying this to people who complain, why aren't we applying it as a process? And we don't do that. The process now is people who complain, do the
So
research.
then we need to advertise, come complaining and we'll refund it.
Well, what we should do is have a policy one way or the other. Yes, we need to fix it.
But until that happens, we've done this in the past, the water.
Right.
Going through the sewer, that's why.
You're going over and then.
Well, first of all, we don't have a motion. I'd like a motion, which would be to approve the sewer adjustment request for A through G.
I will make that.
All right. Do I have a second?
I will say.
Do I have a motion and a second to approve the sewer adjustment request A through G? Okay, more discussion. I agree with Doug and what you, Judy, we need to have a process, but until we develop that, I think it's not fair to say no when the last month or the month before we said yes, under the same circumstances, and there's nothing that has changed in between.
I got a no vote who got stuck with a water bill for the broken outside spigot one, so.
Yeah,
I mean,
we need to come up with a policy.
I gotta tell you, it's harder than it looks.
It is, absolutely.
I tried.
Well,
But then
I tried the grant one, maybe we try and then we toss it on to someone else.
Developer right from the start, this is what's gonna happen.
It almost
or we
needs to
just
be
tell
like-
everybody.
it almost needs to be in a
Developer thing,
contract
these
with the
ones.
developer within the village. You need to tell these people, put in
Some of them.
your account,
Well,
otherwise we're coming after you for.
or my
money.
suggestion was that the developer is responsible for the cost of putting in the lawn. And they either do it by a stipend or they agree to pay the difference. I mean, it shouldn't always be the village taking it, but anyway, those are things I don't think it's fair for these people to be held to, but I do think we need to develop something.
And A through G, the only thing they have in common is that it's all not running through the sewer.
Right,
But in previous meetings, we have denied requests from multiple villagers who have busted stuff as was brought up. Which one of those applies to the group here? At least one of us right now. Yeah, like I have a busted hose. It's like, well, that would, I mean, it's not the village, you know? It's not the village
Well,
responsibility, I think.
well, then we could vote this motion down and pull out a motion that pulls that out if that's what people want.
I'm just looking for continuity and fairness.
Right.
in how we-
Me too.
I think that's off the door because we just can't do it tonight. Who knows how many people have
I will be abstaining from the vote.
And I don't recall, I know that I've been part of the meeting. I don't recall when it's an outdoor watering situation that we denied it. I know we've denied some that have done toilets and things because it gets.
Yeah.
But, you know, I want to be fair and know what I've done in the past, so I will continue to do it.
I was just gonna say, had any of these been a plumbing issue where Jerry's recommendation would have been to deny, it wouldn't have been on the consent. agenda. That one would have been a separate one on the regular. But because these were all kind of straightforward ones, that's why we put it on.
Straightforward and water. We really need to do something, and I guess I'll try to.
I'll appoint you to take care of that.
I'll take a shot at it and get beat up and that's all.
Andy said he'll consult.
Yeah.
We got. See, that's how you build teamwork.
Yeah.
There you go.
Ready to grant for it.
All right, well, we have a motion, any other discussion on this? Since if someone's gonna abstain, we better do a roll call. I'm not sure why unless your house is one.
No,
All right,
You have trustee Bratton first,
I'm abstaining.
trustee Calvater,
No,
trustee Paul Mikowski,
Yes.
trustee Hartman,
No.
trustee Borman,
Yes.
trustee Brunner,
yes.
president Langfield.
Yes. Motion carries.
Is it just because he said no?
motion to adjourn.
Yeah, let's do that. Got a motion to adjourn, do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Wonderful.
Always a good time.
Yeah.
We need to go. Is there a?